bit, okay? I want to break this down as the term that it is, because when I looked up the Greek on this whole thing, this whole idea of enticed and dragged away, each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed, is a fishing term. It's a fishing term. It's about using bait to lure you away. I mean, don't you wonder about fish sometimes? Don't you think that at some point that bass down in the lake is going to go, you know, I see that shiny thing, but the last time my friend ate one of those, I never saw him again. But they don't do that, do they? You know why? Because fish are not very bright creatures, right? They have short-term memory loss. We found that out from Dory and Nemo, right? I have short-term memory loss. It runs in my family. At least I think it does, right? Well, you know what? As I deal with the aftermath of lust and human sexuality, I got to tell you, I think we're just as dumb as fish. I see this a lot. I mean, we hit on this thing over and over again. We know the stories. I think Satan uses lust probably more than anything else. And again, this is not just about, it's not just about sexuality. It probably mostly is, but it's about anything forbidden. It's about that shiny thing that looks so good that I want to put into my life. It's really interesting because there are some great analogies to temptation and fishing if you really think about it, okay? For one thing, you got to choose the best place and the best time. Right. I mean, a good fisherman knows the best place to go. He's got his depth finder, right? He knows where the fish are. He knows that the crappie are going to be underneath the branches, or the bass is going to be over here, or whatever, the muskie's going to be, or whatever he's fishing for. He knows where they're likely to be, and he's going to go to that place. And he also knows the right time of day. That's why I don't fish, because you got to get up early and sit in a boat and hope something's going to happen. And fishing and ADD just don't work together very good, you know? But if you're a fisherman, you know it's early in the morning, or maybe it's at dusk, and different fish hit at different times, and he's got to know that. Well, guess what? Satan knows the same thing, doesn't he? He knows when your energy is depleted, your morale is low. He knows when you're going to be depressed. He knows when you and your spouse have had a fight. He knows when you are the most susceptible to this lure. He knows when that is. And he also knows the places where you're going to likely be, that he can tag you as easily as he wants to. So he knows the best time and place. That's pretty obvious. The next one is you got to choose the best lure. All right, this is a bass lure. This is specific, for a specific type of fish. This is why there is a Bass Pro Shop, because there are different lures. I know if you don't fish, you don't get this, but there are different lures for different kinds of fish. I was just thinking, speaking of bringing somebody from the, first century into the 21st, could you imagine taking Peter, James, and John to Bass Pro Shop? They'd be like, what? All we did was throw nets out, and we ate what we caught. It didn't really matter. But no, we know how to do this. We've got the science. This is a bass lure, and when you hit, it's got a little popper in the mouth of this thing. Makes a little popping noise so that they can hear it, and it's shiny. And it's really, really fascinating to me is that, almost always a lure like this is going to have a skirt on it that hides the hook. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you ever thought about that or not, but Satan always tempts us with the things that look good and they look pretty, and he never tells us about the hook that's underneath there, does he? And having the right lure, of course, is not enough. We got to know how to use the lure. You got to know how to cast it and bring it in. You don't want it to make too much noise when you plop it in, and you don't want to be too loud around there. You got to know how to work the lure. That's number 3. You got to know how to work it. You got to throw it in. You got to, get it out to a certain depth. You got to start reeling it in. Don't worry if I'm not going to play cast on you. It is an art form. I mean, most beginning fishermen are just going to throw it out there, and they're just going to, start reeling it in, and then they're going to go back and they're going to do it again, and they're just going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And that's not the way it works. You got to work it a little bit at a time, then let it go. What does Satan do? He says, just a little bit. Just what would it be like? Don't you wonder? And all of a sudden we're hooked. Let me be very clear again. It's not about seeing it. You can't help seeing it. The lure is there, and it is alluring. But we've got to stay away from it, because number 4 in the fishing analogy is he embeds the hook. You take a bite. Now, you know if you've been fishing, sometimes they grab it and that you can feel them hit it, and you don't get them because you haven't got the hook in there. Sure, every once in a while, you may be able to hit that hook and get away from it and realize, oops, that was a bad idea, and swim away. But usually what happens is we chomp down on it, and the funny thing about the fish is, at first when the fish chomps down on it, he doesn't know, right? He doesn't have any idea. He thinks, well, that didn't taste very good. It tastes like metal, and that's not really my favorite. But then he just starts to swim off, and then the fisherman yanks the line, and the hook is embedded. And you will only go so far before you reach the end of the line, and you're going to get drug in. It's only going to be so many times that you can hit or you can play around with that, and the hook is going to be in your mouth. And your spouse is going to find out. It's going to be a sexually transmitted disease. It's going to be a pregnancy test that didn't turn out the way that you hoped it would. Glenn Close makes stew out of your pet rabbit, Something.